It started as one of the simplest celebrations a community could imagine, a child's birthday party hosted inside a banquet hall on Lucille Avenue in Stockton, California. Families arrived with children in their arms, parents gathered near tables, and relatives prepared for an evening that was meant to be filled with joy. No one inside the building could have predicted how quickly that happiness would turn into chaos, fear, and tragedy. And no one could have imagined that within minutes, multiple lives would be cut short, scores of families would be devastated, and an entire community would be left searching for answers. You're watching CrimeScope with Sam. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts on the comment section below. On this particular Saturday evening, just before 6 p.m., what appeared to be an ordinary family gathering suddenly became the center of one of the deadliest mass shootings in Stockton in recent memory. The event took place roughly 60 miles east of San Francisco, inside a banquet hall along the 1900 block of Lucille Avenue. It was a location typically used for celebrations, birthdays, weddings, family reunions, but on this night, instead of music and laughter echoing through the space, the sound of gunfire tore through the air. Authorities reported receiving the first calls shortly before 6 p.m. Witnesses described the moment panic took over the party. Investigators later confirmed that 14 people were struck by gunfire during the attack. Among them were children and adults, with victims ranging in age from as young as 8 to early 20s. For some, the injuries would prove fatal. People lost their lives during or shortly after the incident, and among them were children. Information released by the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office indicated that early signs suggested the shooting may have been targeted. Officials were cautious in their assessment, stressing that details remained extremely limited. But the nature of the attack, the number of victims, the presence of children, and the violent disruption of what should have been a safe celebration raised immediate alarm. Sheriff's Office spokesperson Heather Brent addressed reporters and urged the public to understand how active and complicated the situation was. She explained that investigators were working urgently to determine the circumstances that led to the shooting, but there was still a great deal they could not yet confirm. Brent stated that the attacker remained at large and identifying the suspect had become the top priority for law enforcement. Local officials responded quickly, with multiple agencies from across the region arriving to support the investigation. The severity of the attack demanded additional resources, and Brent expressed gratitude for the fast cooperation from surrounding departments. She also said that the number of victims, especially the presence of children, heightened the urgency felt across the community and within the sheriff's office. Families across Stockton were desperate for answers, and investigators were determined to find them. Within hours of the shooting, the scale of devastation became clearer. Several victims had been rushed to nearby hospitals, but their conditions were not immediately released. The sheriff's office confirmed the deaths of 4 individuals and acknowledged that those killed included both juveniles and adults. The tragedy struck a painful chord within Stockton, a city familiar with the impacts of violence, but not like this, not at a child's birthday party. As information spread, Stockton Councilwoman Michelle Padilla acknowledged the range of ages among the victims and recognized the gravity of the situation. She did not release names or identities out of respect for the families, but she confirmed that the community had lost children that night. The emotional toll was immediate and severe. Stockton's Vice Mayor Jason Lee took to social media hours after the shooting to express how deeply shaken he was. He grew up in Stockton and knew firsthand how violence could touch a young person's life, but seeing tragedy strike a child's birthday party hit him in a way he said was difficult to describe. He emphasized that Stockton was his home, and the people affected were not just residents, they were families, neighbors, and part of the city's heart. The vice mayor spoke about the pain felt across Stockton and his fear for the mental impact on the children who witnessed the attack. He expressed anger and sadness, noting that the community did not deserve such violence and should never accept it as normal. For the mayor and vice mayor, this wasn't just another tragic headline. It was personal. Stockton has long fought to reshape its image, and community leaders have made significant efforts to strengthen public safety and rebuild trust. But the events of this night created a new wound, one that would take time to heal. The California governor's office also confirmed it was monitoring the situation closely. Officials coordinated with local law enforcement to support the response, highlighting how seriously state authorities took the shooting. Given the number of casualties and the presence of children among the victims, the incident quickly drew statewide concern. At the time of the shooting, authorities could not immediately confirm the type of celebration taking place. But shortly afterward, Vice Mayor Jason Lee clarified that the event was a child's birthday party, solidifying the heartbreaking nature of the tragedy. What should have been a joyful milestone in a young child's life had become the backdrop for immense loss. The sheriff's office stressed repeatedly that the investigation was still unfolding. Detectives worked to understand what led to the eruption of gunfire and why so many victims, including children, were caught in the attack. Law enforcement agencies urged anyone with information to come forward. They emphasized that identifying the suspect was their top priority and that members of the community might hold crucial details that could lead to answers. Even in the early hours, there were hints that the shooting may have been targeted, though officials would not elaborate. Whether the intended target was an individual at the party or a particular group, investigators were not prepared to publicly confirm. But the possibility suggested that the attack may not have been random, raising even more questions about what could have driven someone to open fire at a child's birthday event. While families waited for updates from hospitals, Stockton's leaders voiced their grief. The mayor acknowledged how unimaginable it was that families who should have been celebrating together had instead been thrust into mourning. She pointed out the painful reality that loved ones were standing beside hospital beds, hoping victims survive the night. The feeling across the community was a mix of disbelief, sorrow, and deep fear. The vice mayor, still shaken, shared a broader message about healing and accountability. He insisted the community deserved to know the truth, and the families affected deserved justice. He emphasized the responsibility of local leaders to stand with those who were hurting and provide whatever support was needed. He also highlighted how tragedies like this tested the resilience of Stockton, a city that had worked hard to improve safety and foster community trust. The immediate aftermath of the shooting was marked by widespread confusion. Witnesses gave varying accounts as investigators tried to piece together the sequence of events. The party had been a normal gathering until the gunfire erupted. Some described hearing multiple shots in rapid succession. Others recalled seeing children scream and adults rush to cover them. Several victims collapsed inside the banquet hall, while others tried to escape. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but the scene was chaotic. The sheer number of victims, 14 in total, forced paramedics to prioritize treatment, assess who needed immediate transport, and coordinate with hospitals that suddenly had to prepare for multiple critical arrivals. It was a scene of urgency and heartbreak, one that paramedics described as among the most difficult they had faced. As night fell, law enforcement continued to work the scene. They marked evidence, interviewed witnesses, and widened their search for surveillance footage from surrounding buildings. The shooter had fled before police arrived, leaving investigators with a crucial challenge: tracking down a suspect who had already vanished into the night. The sheriff's office reminded the public that the investigation would take time. They acknowledged the frustration that came with limited information, but insisted accuracy was more important than speed. Detectives had to verify every detail, especially when so many victims and witnesses were involved. The day after the shooting, emotions across Stockton remained raw. Community members expressed grief and disbelief that such violence could unfold at a child's birthday party. Many could not understand what would drive someone to bring a weapon into a family gathering and unleash such devastation. Parents in surrounding neighborhoods spoke about their fear, while teachers and youth workers worried about the long-term trauma for children who survived or witnessed the attack. Authorities continued to search for the suspect and piece together the motive. With 14 people shot, including children, the investigation demanded exhaustive work. Detectives examined whether anyone at the party had ongoing disputes, whether there were prior incidents involving attendees, and whether social or family conflicts might have triggered the attack. But publicly, officials maintained caution, stating only that early indications suggested a targeted incident. While the public waited for further updates, officials reinforced their commitment to supporting affected families. Local leaders emphasized that Stockton was a community that valued unity, and they called on residents to support each other through the aftermath. They encouraged people to come forward with information, no matter how small it seemed. The vice mayor reflected on the broader implications of the tragedy. He spoke about the trauma children would carry from witnessing such violence and how critical it would be for the community to rally around them. He stressed that Stockton did not deserve to be defined by moments of violence, especially when endured by its youngest residents. He reiterated his commitment to ensuring the families received answers, justice, and support. As days passed, law enforcement continued to gather evidence, analyze witness statements, and track potential leads regarding the shooter. They remained firm in their message. Finding the suspect was their top priority. The governor's office maintained communication with local agencies, assisting where needed and monitoring developments closely. Community organizations stepped forward to offer resources and emotional support. Counselors and trauma specialists prepared to work with children affected by the event. Local leaders encouraged families to seek help and reminded them that no one had to process the tragedy alone. The broader Stockton region mourned with the families who had lost children and loved ones. People across the city shared messages of solidarity and heartbreak. Many expressed outrage that such violence could strike at a celebration meant for children. Others focused on the importance of holding those responsible accountable and preventing further tragedies. Authorities continued to withhold names of the victims out of respect for their families. But the ages and circumstances alone were enough to deepen the pain felt across the community. For lives lost, 10 more wounded, and dozens of families forever changed, all because of an attack that unfolded in an instant. Law enforcement asked for patience as the investigation progressed. They acknowledged that the public was desperate for clarity, but emphasized the importance of a thorough and accurate investigation. Every detail mattered when so many lives had been touched by tragedy. The sheriff's office continued coordinating with multiple agencies, piecing together what happened in those moments leading up to the shooting. Investigators evaluated whether the presence of so many young people influenced the shooter's actions or whether the attack had been aimed at a single person within the crowd. The possibility of a targeted motive remained under review, though no official confirmation was made. As the investigation carried on, the emotional weight of the tragedy lingered. Families who had expected to celebrate a birthday were facing funerals instead. Children who attended the party struggled with fear and confusion. Community leaders confronted renewed questions about safety, violence, and the well-being of Stockton's youth. Tragedies like this left scars that went far beyond the initial event. For many residents, it reignited conversations about community protection, conflict prevention, and support for vulnerable families. Leaders committed to reviewing safety measures, supporting law enforcement efforts, and strengthening programs that could help prevent violence in the future. But on the night of the shooting itself, the focus remained on the people who had been injured and the families who had suffered unimaginable loss. The mayor articulated how heartbreaking it was that families who should have been celebrating together were instead clinging to hope in hospital rooms. The vice mayor echoed this, describing the pain experienced by the city and emphasizing the need for unity and resilience. Authorities acknowledged that the road to answers would be long, but they assured the community that every resource available would be used to identify the suspect, understand the motive, and bring justice to the victims. In a tragedy defined by shock, grief, and unanswered questions, one thing was certain: Stockton would not forget what happened at that child's birthday party. It would remain a symbol of the fragility of safety, the weight of community sorrow, and the urgent need to protect the city's families, especially its children. If this case intrigued you, make sure to subscribe and follow for more investigations here on CrimeScope with Sam. Thank you for watching.